The day Ambassador David Topper realized humanity had accidentally weaponized caffeine was the same day the Galactic Consortium threatened to revoke Earth's diplomatic credentials. What do you mean we're banned from hosting trade negotiations? Topper leaned forward in his chair, coffee mug halfway to his lips. The holographic projection of High Arbiter Velnox of the crystalline quartz flickered with what Topper had learned to recognize as agitation. The alien's translucent form shifted through several uncomfortable colors. Your species, Velnox said, each word clipped with barely contained frustration, has violated 17 protocols, undermined 12 established power structures, and somehow convinced the Mecta Confederacy to share their gravity well technology. All within 3 standard months. Topper blinked. Is that bad? Ambassador Topper. Velnox's form pulsed red. The Mecta haven't shared technology with anyone in 4 centuries, not even under threat of invasion. Yet after one afternoon in your facility's lounge, their entire delegation signed an open-source agreement. Well, we did have excellent pastries that day. The High Arbiter's form went nearly purple. This is precisely the problem. Topper set down his mug, genuinely confused. You're upset about our pastries. We are upset, Velnox said slowly, about your complete disregard for proper diplomatic procedure. The Galactic Consortium has operated on established protocols for 8,000 years. Your species arrived 2 years ago and has already destabilized the entire system. Destabilized seems like a strong word. You resolved the Andorian-Plex border dispute over sandwiches. They were really good sandwiches, Topper offered. Velnox made a sound that the translator rendered as extreme exasperation. The consortium is implementing new rules. All human diplomatic facilities will be inspected. All informal meeting spaces will be documented. And absolutely no food or beverages are to be served during official negotiations. Topper frowned. That seems unnecessarily harsh. Your ambassador, Patterson, managed to establish a 3-way trade alliance while giving what you called a casual facility tour. The Vrin Collective signed over mining rights to an entire asteroid belt because someone offered them hot chocolate. It was really good hot chocolate, Topper muttered. That is not the point. Velnox's form crackled with energy. Diplomacy is serious business, Ambassador. It requires formal procedures, careful protocol, and proper ceremonial distance. Topper considered this. Have you ever tried doing diplomacy while comfortable? Comfort is irrelevant too, because I find people are way more reasonable when they're not sitting in uncomfortable chairs for 8 hours. Velnox's form froze. This conversation is over. The inspection team arrives tomorrow. I suggest you prepare your facility. The projection vanished. Topper sipped his coffee and sighed. This was going to be complicated. The next morning, Topper stood in the lobby of Earth's diplomatic station, watching 6 different species file in with scanning equipment and recording devices. The lead inspector was a Quarian named Bexel, whose 4 eyes rotated independently as he examined every surface with obvious suspicion. Ambassador Topper, Bexel's mandibles clicked together. We will begin with your primary conference rooms. Sure thing, Topper gestured down the hallway. Coffee while we walk. Every inspector froze. Bexel's eyes all focused on Topper at once. Absolutely not. Right. The new rules, no problem. Topper led them to the main conference room, noting how each inspector carefully maintained maximum distance from him. The primary conference space was standard Earth design. Comfortable chairs arranged around an oval table, adjustable lighting, temperature controls visible on every wall, and a small kitchenette in the corner. What, Bexel said slowly, is that? The kitchenette. That's where we keep the coffee maker and— Stop. Bexel held up one appendage. Stop saying that word. Coffee, 3 inspectors flinched. Why do you need beverage preparation in a negotiation space? Bexel demanded. Topper shrugged. People get thirsty, long meetings and all. This is exactly the problem. Bexel gestured at his team, who began scanning everything with handheld devices. Your species has corrupted proper diplomatic procedure with these comfort mechanisms. Is being comfortable really that threatening? Yes, Bexel's mandibles clacked rapidly. Because species lose their negotiating discipline when they are comfortable. They forget to maintain proper defensive postures. They begin treating galaxy-shaping discussions like casual conversations. And that's bad because— Bexel stared at him. All 4 eyes. Because it undermines thousands of years of diplomatic tradition. One of the inspectors, a small amphibious Quellan, raised a webbed hand. Sir, The chairs are ergonomically designed for 17 different species anatomies. The temperature control has microzones. The lighting automatically adjusts to each individual's optimal spectrum. Bexel turned slowly to Topper. You engineered this entire room for psychological manipulation. We engineered it so everyone would be comfortable, Topper corrected. That's not the same thing. It absolutely is. Bexel stalked around the table. Every element serves to lower defensive barriers and encourage agreement. This is a psychological operation disguised as interior design. Topper scratched his head. Or it's just a nice room where people can have productive conversations. There is no such thing as casual conversation in diplomacy. Maybe there should be. Bexel made a sound like grinding metal. This kitchenette is to be removed at once. The delegates like having access to drinks and snacks. Then the delegates will learn proper discipline. Bexel pointed at the comfortable chairs. These are too comfortable. Replace them with standard diplomatic seating. The metal ones that hurt after 20 minutes. Yes, Topper crossed his arms. What if we don't? Then Earth's diplomatic credentials will be suspended pending a full investigation. Bexel leaned closer. The consortium is serious about this, Ambassador. Your species' methods are dangerous. Because we're nice to people. Because you are too effective at being nice to people. Bexel gestured at his team to continue their inspection. By the time you finish with them, they have forgotten they came to negotiate and believe they came to socialize. Is that so terrible? Yes, because they give you everything you want without realizing it. Topper opened his mouth to respond, but another inspector called out from the corner. Sir, there is a storage area here filled with what appears to be different types of tea. Bexel's mandibles trembled. How many types? At least 30 varieties. 30. Bexel turned back to Topper. Why do you need 30 varieties of tea? Different species have different preferences, Topper offered. You have literally weaponized hospitality, Bexel said quietly. This entire facility is designed to make visitors feel so welcomed and comfortable that they lose all negotiating discipline. That seems like a weird way to phrase making people feel at home. It is an accurate way to describe psychological warfare. Topper held up his hands. Look, I get that our methods are different, but they work. Species that have hated each other for centuries are actually talking now. We've resolved disputes that have been deadlocked for decades. Trade is flowing, alliances are forming, and nobody's shooting at each other. Isn't that what diplomacy is supposed to achieve? Bexel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, your species has accomplished more in 2 years than most species manage in centuries. That is precisely why you are dangerous. Because we're good at our jobs. Because you make it look easy. Bexel gestured around the room. You bypass centuries of established procedure and protocol with hot beverages and comfortable furniture. You resolve conflicts over lunch. You turn negotiations into social gatherings, and somehow everyone walks away satisfied. It should not work, yet it does. And that terrifies the consortium. Topper considered this. You're not actually mad that we're breaking protocol. You're mad that breaking protocol works better. Bexel's eyes all focused on him again. I did not say that. You didn't have to. The Quarian inspector turned away, mandibles clicking rapidly. This facility is to be stripped of all comfort elements within the standard week. The kitchenette, the ergonomic furniture, the temperature controls, all of it. Earth will conduct diplomacy according to consortium standards or not at all. And if we refuse, then humanity will be expelled from the consortium and Earth will be isolated from galactic trade, communication, and protection. Topper felt his stomach drop. You're threatening to cut us off from the entire galaxy because we serve coffee. We are protecting diplomatic integrity, Bexel corrected. Your methods may be effective, but they undermine the entire foundation of proper negotiation. If every species starts adopting human hospitality tactics, the consortium will collapse into chaos. Or maybe everyone will just get along better. That is not how diplomacy works. Maybe that's the problem. Bexel made that grinding metal sound again. You have 1 week, Ambassador. Make the changes or face the consequences. The inspection team filed out, leaving Topper alone in his comfortable conference room, wondering how he was going to explain to Earth that they had been too nice for the galaxy's own good. Topper called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Rachel Brennan, his chief negotiator, arrived carrying her tablet and a concerned expression. Tom Wilson, the facility manager, looked equally worried. Dr. Lisa Park, their xenopsychology specialist, was already analyzing the inspection report. So they want us to make everyone miserable. Rachel sat in one of the comfortable chairs, likely for the last time. That's their solution. They want us to follow established protocol, Topper said, which apparently means uncomfortable chairs and no refreshments. Tom shook his head. Boss, our success rate drops by at least 30% without environmental optimization. I have the data. Show me. Tom pulled up holographic displays. See these negotiations from last month. Comfortable environment, access to beverages, adjustable temperature. Resolution time averaged 4 hours. Success rate 92%. He switched displays. Now look at the 3 times we had to use consortium's standard facilities. Average resolution time 3 weeks. Success rate 60%. Rachel leaned forward. The data is clear. Our methods work better. Why should we change? Because if we don't, Earth gets isolated from the entire galactic community, Topper said. Lisa looked up from the inspection report. There is something else interesting here. Bexel mentions that our methods terrify the consortium, not anger them, terrify them. Because we are too effective. Because we threaten the power structure. Lisa highlighted several sections of the report. The consortium has operated for millennia on the principle that diplomacy must be difficult, formal, and carefully controlled. Species spend decades learning proper protocol. Power flows to those who master the complicated rules. But humans simply ignore all of that and achieve better results through basic hospitality. We have made their entire system obsolete. Topper rubbed his temples. So this is not about protocol at all. It is about protecting established power. Lisa closed the report. The current diplomatic elite cannot compete with our methods, so they want to ban our methods. Can they actually do that? Rachel asked. They can threaten to isolate Earth, Topper said, and that threat is very real. Humanity needs galactic trade and protection. We cannot afford to be cut off. Tom crossed his arms. So we just give up. Let them force us back into the dark ages of uncomfortable diplomacy. I did not say that. Topper stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. But we need to be smart about this. The consortium is scared of us. That gives us leverage. What kind of leverage? Rachel asked. Topper turned back to his team. The kind that comes from being too useful to get rid of. 3 days later, Topper stood in the abandoned mining station that had become the consortium's emergency negotiation site. The Vryn Collective and the Andorian Republic had been on the verge of war for 6 months, and every attempt at resolution had failed. The situation was now critical, and the consortium was desperate. Topper had received the message from High Arbiter Velnox personally. Despite their recent conflicts, the consortium needed humanity's help. The two species were hours from open combat, and traditional diplomatic methods had accomplished nothing. The mining station was exactly what Topper expected from consortium's standard facilities. Cold, uncomfortable, and deliberately unwelcoming. The conference space featured metal benches, harsh lighting, and walls bare of any decoration. It was designed to make negotiations as unpleasant as possible, presumably to motivate quick resolution. Instead, it had made both species miserable and angry. Topper walked into the room where representatives from both sides sat glaring at each other across a metal table. Neither side stood to greet him. Ambassador Topper. The Vryn representative crossed all 6 arms defensively. The consortium sent a human. This is an insult. I am here because you are about to start a war over a trade route, Topper said calmly. And I would really prefer you did not. The Andorian representative hissed. The Vryn have blocked our access to the Zephyr Passage for 3 months. They leave us no choice. You violated the original treaty terms, the Vryn snapped back. Because those terms were established under coercion. Topper held up his hands. Okay, everyone take a breath. Can I ask you both a question? Both representatives glared at him but said nothing. Are you actually comfortable in here? The Vryn blinked several of its eyes. What? This room? Are you comfortable? Because you both look miserable, and I am betting that is not helping the situation. Comfort is irrelevant to diplomacy, the Andorian said stiffly. Is it, though? Topper walked around the metal table. Because from what I have read, this conflict started over a disagreement about trade route usage rights. That is fundamentally an economic discussion. Both of you want the same thing, profit. But instead of talking about how you can both benefit, you are sitting in this terrible room getting angrier at each other. The Vryn refused to negotiate in good faith, the Andorian insisted. Because the Andorians present impossible demands, the Vryn shot back. Topper nodded. Right, so here is what we are going to do. There is a small observation lounge 3 levels up. It has windows, decent chairs, and a functioning beverage synthesizer. We are moving this negotiation there. Both representatives stared at him. That violates consortium protocol, the Andorian said. Probably. But are you willing to start a war over protocol? Silence. Come on. Topper headed for the door. Worst case, you get a comfortable chair and a hot drink. Best case, we solve this before anyone dies. After a moment of hesitation, both representatives followed him. The observation lounge was not much, but it was infinitely better than the conference space. Actual chairs, natural lighting from the nearby star, and a view of space that reminded everyone how small their problems were in the grand scheme of things. Topper gestured to the chairs. Sit, I will figure out the synthesizer. Ambassador, the Vrin said carefully, the consortium explicitly banned your hospitality methods. The consortium also sent me here to prevent a war. Topper examined the synthesizer controls. I am going to assume stopping the war is the higher priority. Now, what do you both drink? It took 20 minutes to figure out the synthesizer, but Topper eventually produced something approximating Vrin's spiced tea and Andorian crystal water. He set the drinks in front of each representative and sat down. All right, let us start over. What do you actually want from the Zephyr passage? The Vrin representative took a tentative sip of tea. Access for our trade ships. The passage cuts 3 weeks off our route to the outer markets. And what do you want? Topper asked the Andorian. The same access, plus compensation for the infrastructure we built in the region. Okay, Topper leaned back in his chair. So you both want to use the passage, and the Andorians want payment for improvements they made. That seems solvable. The Vrin refused to pay, the Andorian said. Because we did not authorize those improvements, the Vrin countered. You cannot build something on a shared route and then demand payment. Topper nodded. Fair point, but the improvements benefit both of you, right? Both representatives nodded reluctantly. Then maybe we are looking at this wrong. Instead of the Vrin paying the Andorians, what if the passage becomes jointly operated? You split maintenance costs and fees. Both species have equal access, both species share the benefits. The Vrin and Andorian looked at each other, then back at Topper. That would require significant legal restructuring, the Andorian said slowly. But it would resolve the access dispute, the Vrin admitted. And the fee structure could be designed to gradually compensate the Andorians for their infrastructure investment, Topper added. Everyone gets what they want, no war required. The two representatives were quiet for several moments. Then the Vrin said, this is actually a reasonable solution. The consortium negotiators never suggested anything like this, the Andorian said, sounding surprised. Because they were too busy following protocol to actually solve the problem. Topper stood. I am going to leave you two here to work out the details. Take your time, be comfortable, have some more tea. Just promise me you will not blow each other up. The Vrin managed something that might have been a smile. We promise, Ambassador Topper. Topper left them in the observation lounge and headed back to contact Velnox. He had just violated every rule the consortium had established, and he was about to find out if preventing a war was worth the consequences. High Arbiter Velnox's holographic form materialized in the command center, already pulsing an angry red. Ambassador Topper, you were explicitly instructed. The Vrin and Andorians just signed a joint operation agreement for the Zephyr passage. Topper interrupted. The war is off. Velnox's form flickered through several colors. What? Took about 4 hours. They are actually pretty happy with the solution. Turns out when people are not miserable and angry, they can think more clearly. You violated direct consortium orders. I stopped a war, Topper said calmly. I thought that was the point. The point was to demonstrate that proper diplomatic protocol does not work as well as comfortable chairs and hot drinks. Yes, I got the memo. Topper crossed his arms. High Arbiter, can I ask you something honestly? Velnox's form stabilized into a wary blue. What? Why does the consortium actually care how we conduct diplomacy? If our methods achieve better results, why is that a problem? Because it undermines the power structure. Yes, my xenopsychology specialist figured that out. Topper stepped closer to the projection. You are not protecting diplomatic integrity. You are protecting the status quo. Because if everyone realizes that diplomacy does not have to be complicated and formal and miserable, then a lot of very powerful people lose their relevance. Velnox was silent. Here is what I think, Topper continued. I think the consortium is terrified because humanity walked in and made 8,000 years of tradition obsolete in 2 years. We did not do it with superior technology or military might. We did it by being nice to people. And that is the most threatening thing you have ever encountered. Your methods are dangerous, Velnox said quietly. Our methods work. There is a difference. You make it too easy. Species begin to expect simple solutions. They lose respect for the complexity of interstellar relations. Topper shook his head. Or maybe interstellar relations were never supposed to be that complex. Maybe thousands of years of elaborate protocol just created problems instead of solving them. Maybe diplomacy works better when people actually like each other. That is not how the galaxy operates. It could be, though. Topper met the High Arbiter's gaze. You sent me to stop a war, and I stopped it. Using human methods. Methods that you banned. Are you really going to punish me for succeeding? Velnox's form cycled through several colors in rapid succession. Finally, it settled into a resigned grey. The Consortium Council will convene tomorrow to discuss this situation. Your presence is required. Am I in trouble? Honestly, Ambassador Topper, I have no idea anymore. The projection vanished. Topper sat down and allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow would be interesting. The Consortium Council chamber was designed to be intimidating. Representatives from 80 different species sat in concentric circles, all focused on the central speaking platform where Topper stood. The lighting was dramatic, the acoustics perfect, and the atmosphere deliberately oppressive. Topper had worn his most formal suit. If he was going down, he would look good doing it. High Arbiter Velnox floated at the head of the assembly. Ambassador David Topper of Earth, you have been summoned to answer for violations of consortium diplomatic protocol. How do you plead? Guilty, I guess, Topper said, though I would like to point out that I prevented a war, established a successful joint trade agreement, and made two previously hostile species actually like each other. So guilty, but in a good way. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Velnox's form pulsed red. You were explicitly ordered to cease your informal diplomatic methods, and you explicitly sent me to stop the Vrinandorian conflict. Which order was I supposed to follow? You were supposed to use proper consortium protocol, which had failed for 6 months, Topper pointed out, whereas my methods worked in 4 hours. Another representative, a towering Melkoran, rose to speak. The human makes a valid point. We sent him because our methods had failed. Can we truly punish him for succeeding where we did not? The issue is not success, Velnox said. The issue is methodology. Then perhaps, Topper said carefully, the methodology is not actually the problem. The chamber went silent. Topper took a breath. With respect, High Arbiter, this council is afraid of change. You have operated the same way for 8,000 years. That is impressive. But impressive does not mean effective. How many conflicts have dragged on for decades because proper protocol demanded patience? How many species suffer because the negotiation process is too slow and complicated? How many opportunities for cooperation are lost because everyone is too busy following rules to actually talk to each other? You oversimplify, Velnox said. I simplify, Topper agreed, because most conflicts are not actually that complicated. Species want security, prosperity, and respect. If you give them comfortable spaces to talk, treat them with genuine hospitality, and focus on solving problems instead of following protocol, you can usually find solutions. It is not magic, it is just being decent to each other. A small reptilian delegate raised a claw. The human suggests we abandon millennia of diplomatic tradition for comfortable chairs and hot beverages. No, Topper said. I suggest you use whatever works. If formal protocol solves the problem, great. If comfortable chairs solve the problem faster, why not use them? The goal is successful diplomacy, not rigid adherence to tradition. You make it sound so simple, the Melkoran said. Because it can be simple, you have chosen to make it complicated. Velnox's form darkened. And if every species adopts your methods, if the entire galactic community abandons proper diplomatic procedure, Topper smiled, then maybe everyone gets along better. Is that really so terrible? The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives argued with each other across the circles, some supporting Topper, others demanding his expulsion. The noise level rose steadily. Finally, Velnox called for order. This council will recess for deliberation. Ambassador Topper, you will await our decision. Topper was escorted to a waiting room. It was, predictably, uncomfortable and bare. He sat on the metal bench and wondered if Earth's brief membership in the galactic community was about to end. Rachel found him 3 hours later. They have reached a decision. Good decision or bad decision? Hard to tell. Velnox wants to see you privately first. Topper followed her back through the corridors to a small office. High Arbiter Velnox was waiting, his holographic form a complex swirl of colors. Ambassador Topper, Velnox gestured to a chair. Sit. Topper sat, noting that the chair was actually comfortable. Interesting. The council has made its decision, Velnox said. But before we announce it, I want to understand something. Why do humans care so much about making others comfortable? Topper considered the question. Because we know what it is like to be uncomfortable, I suppose. Human history is full of conflict and suffering. We learned, eventually, that treating each other well makes everything easier. So when we joined the galactic community, we brought that lesson with us. You weaponize kindness. We use kindness effectively, Topper corrected. There is a difference. Velnox was quiet for a moment. Then he said, the Vrin and Andorian delegations both submitted reports praising your methods. They have requested that future negotiations be conducted using what they termed human hospitality protocols. That is good, right? It is problematic, Velnox said, because 17 other species have now made similar requests. The Council cannot ignore that reality. So what happens now? The Council has decided not to expel Earth from the consortium. Velnox's form shifted to a resigned blue. Instead, we are establishing a new diplomatic classification. Traditional protocol for species that prefer formal methods and human protocol for those willing to try your approach. Topper blinked. You are officially accepting our methods. We are officially acknowledging that your methods work, even if we do not fully understand why. Earth's diplomatic station will be allowed to continue operating as designed. Other species may adopt similar approaches if they choose. That is incredible. That is terrifying, Velnox corrected. But the data is undeniable. Your success rate is too high to ignore. The galaxy is changing, Ambassador Topper. You have seen to that. Topper stood and extended his hand. Thank you, High Arbiter. I know this was not an easy decision. Velnox stared at the offered hand for a moment, then cautiously reached out with one translucent appendage. They shook. Now, Velnox said, please return to your station and stop causing diplomatic incidents. I will do my best. That is what worries me. 3 weeks later, Topper stood in Earth's diplomatic station, watching a consortium inspection team to the facilities. This time, however, they were not looking for violations. They were taking notes on design elements to implement in their own stations. Rachel joined him at the window. Did you ever think this would happen? Honestly, no. I thought we were about to get kicked out of the galaxy. Instead, you revolutionized galactic diplomacy with coffee and comfortable chairs. Technically, it was more than just coffee and chairs. There was also tea and pastries and basic human decency. Rachel laughed. The galaxy is never going to be the same. Probably not, but maybe that is okay. Tom walked up carrying his tablet, grinning. Boss, you have to see this. The Melkoran Collective just ordered 62 ergonomic conference chairs. The Crystalline Courts are installing kitchenettes in all their diplomatic facilities, and the Quarians are holding a seminar on strategic hospitality deployment. Topper shook his head in disbelief. We actually did it. We changed how the galaxy does diplomacy. By being nice to people, Lisa added, joining the group. Humanity's greatest weapon turns out to be genuine hospitality. Who would have thought? Apparently not the consortium, Rachel said. Topper watched the inspectors examine the comfortable chairs with scientific fascination. Somewhere out there, thousands of species were learning that diplomacy did not have to be miserable, that conflicts could be resolved over hot drinks and comfortable conversations, that sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones. High Arbiter Velnox had been right about one thing. The galaxy was changing, and it had all started with a cup of coffee.